Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
Warning, you might live in a no constitution zone. It's the shocking story you won't see on TV. Depending upon where you live in the United States, you may no longer have constitutional rights. Politicians are quietly squeezing the middle class to micromanage you and extract your wealth. Want to see how? Watch the free video at noconstitutionzone.com. Soon, you'll have the last laugh by using these cultural contraband tricks and profit like a king. That's noconstitutionzone.com.
FSN. It's about what's next. And we are back from the Liberty Mastermind Symposium. It went exceedingly well. It was nonstop, didn't miss a beat. And here we are with Andy Hoffman, who also never misses a beat. We got not one coup, not two coups. We have 3 coups on 3 different continents. Andy, how are you?
Great. And again, I want to congratulate you and Robert. You put on one of the better shows that people could find out there. Great speakers, a lot of interaction. I thought it was fantastic.
Hey, thanks. So what's going on here in the world? I mean, we're really getting to the point. I mean, you likened it to the tide receding in a tsunami. I mean, the water is just getting sucked out. And man, I'm ready to climb a tree or a cell phone tower at this point.
Yeah, and people just sitting there staring at the Dow. And I'm not talking about the 99% that don't own the Dow, but the market commentators and media going, wow, the Dow's up 180 points. I mean, the news today in the States was 3 separate massive misses of earnings of economic data to go with like the 20 of last week. And of course, if they were better than expected, the PPT would have the Dow up 180, and they'd be writing, well, the economy is getting better. Now they'll say, well, it's because the Fed is going to pause or reverse tapering, or better yet, they'll say, well, look at the Japanese yen dollar exchange rate. Whenever that goes down, that means the S&P should go up. It's just the most silly, blatant transparency of manipulation you've ever seen, and that's why it's amazing when you see a front page article on the London Financial Times today about gold manipulation, about a study that shows that gold has probably been manipulated at least 50% of all trading days over the last 3 years. It's going mainstream, and pretty soon people are going to realize, as I wrote last week, the realization of reality, that the only things that are, quote, good are the things that are lies.
Yeah, well, this is 1984, and I was having a conversation with somebody at the conference that, we're kind of living in a world of Aldous Huxley and George Orwell combined. Neither one was right on their own, but if you mix the two together, you get a very accurate portrayal of the world today. You mix Soma with Newspeak, and that's what we're living in now. You know that?
Yeah, I think it's a perfect example, a perfect case study of the human the human condition, of how they think. I mean, the best example probably is you go back to the Holocaust and you go, how did people let this happen? And I'm not talking about, yes, I know people were too scared. It's not like they can go stand up to Hitler. But so many people denied it in their minds because they knew it was the only way they could sleep at night. And it's the same kind of thing. You look around, you know what's going on in the world. You know that the economies are falling apart. There's, as you said, there's literally 3 coups going on at once in Venezuela, the Congo, and Ukraine on 3 different continents. And believe me, this is because of inflation exported by the West. And yet people just kind of act like there's nothing going on, that they don't need to protect themselves or think about these kind of things when they're so blatantly obvious and right in front of them.
Hey, we had just last week in the U.S., we didn't talk about this at the conference, and it was my remissness that I didn't bring it up. First, the Department of Homeland Security canceled plans to build a nationwide license plate database, and that was going to be a combination of all the local police departments that use plate scanners, all the easy passes, everything. and then private companies in garages and everything else that use it. It was going to have like trillions of records. And then the FCC was going to have monitors to monitor news coverage at broadcast stations and print publications and internet portals. And somehow there was outrage at both of these. I mean, everybody was up in arms, and they publicly backed off on both plans. But somehow I think they're going to come back to life. I mean,
well, you know that they didn't back off of these plans because of public outrage. First of all, as we were just talking about here, what public outrage? Like a handful of people? I mean,
you and me, we caused them to back off. Me and Andy Hoffman.
You know, people like the Financial Survival Network and the SGT report. I mean, aside from that, I don't know who else is really complaining. It's like at your conference, we talked, Wayne Allen Root talking about Obamacare, and you know, some people saying it's a conspiracy, and some people are saying the government is too dumb, and you know, some you're talking about a combination of each. I'm kind of in the middle because my main premise has always been the government is too dumb to think of these things. That they just play defense every day. They wake up and try to kick the can. But then there's some people who believe that there's a major conspiracy out there to take the country down. And I mean, can you imagine? Think about Obamacare, like how much, Wayne gave all the numbers of how many man hours it will take to comply with Obamacare, like 275 million man hours. And the same thing would go for this national database. They can't even get a website for Obamacare. You think they're going to be able to manage a database for every license plate in America?
I think it'd be easier because it's less data, but who the heck knows? I mean, it's just out of hand how stupid the whole thing is. And then what are you going to do with it? Give everybody a parking ticket?
Well,
right?
I mean, there's so many of those things that come up. I don't even know what to know is true anymore. Like when they say the Department of Homeland Security, or actually when they say the IRS is buying 2 million hollow point bullets, is that really true? Can we really prove that? I mean, I know there's been videos of those tanks crossing the desert in Arizona, and people are saying that the government is buying all these, getting ready to mobilize. But there's so many of these stories out there. It's just hard to know what's true. Do they really plan to make a database for license plates, or are they just trying to scare someone? And the same goes for FEMA camps. There's just too many stories out there that there's really no way of knowing what they're doing. I mean, they're doing a lot of bad stuff, but I just don't know exactly what they're doing.
I go back and forth on it, but you could pretty much assume that they're up to no good. Okay,
yes,
whatever they're doing, whether it is volitional or whether they're trying to help you, it doesn't really matter because they're up to no good, right?
Fair enough.
Okay, so if it's well-intentioned, they're going to screw it up, and if they're trying to hurt you, they're going to screw you up. So just assume that they're up to no good, and you'll never go wrong, right?
I'm sorry. Here's a breaking news because I'm a multitasker, and I'm always like on zero edge and stuff. Oil spill shuts New Orleans port and Mississippi River. Oh boy, a big one too.
A big one.
2 barges collided. 65 miles remain closed. You know, I used to live there. I see the pictures. It's right by the bridge. This is right in the city.
I kind of know where that is. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And so what do you know? Oil's back over $103 a barrel, but there's no inflation.
Yeah, well, that's good to know.
They can blame it on this, blame it on the weather, even though I've proven that it's not the weather. They can blame it on the oil spill, even though it's not on the oil spill. But believe me, this won't help. If there's a major oil spill in the absolute worst possible place.
Hey, by the way, natural gas, speaking of no inflation, it hit $6.50 per million BTU today.
Yes.
But there's no inflation, and don't worry about it, right?
Well, it's interesting because, as you know, I was an oil analyst for 10 years, oil field service analyst. I covered the service company. So while I was not making the oil and gas price call, I spent my entire life staring at the data and utilizing it. So I'm pretty well versed in that kind of stuff. And I was quite amazed after all this hype about how there's all this excess gas and all the shale and blah, blah, blah. And then I just saw, our friend Steve St. Angelo, SRS Rocco, he showed the natural gas inventory numbers, and I'm going, it's no different than it was 10, 15 years ago. We're going to be down under 1 TCF at the, at the end of the season in a month or so. And I don't know what they're talking about, that there's all this extra gas out there. I mean, we could easily go back to $10 plus natural gas if we're going to be this low on inventory, and that's after this supposed big boom in production.
Hey, well, we're down. The inventories are down 50% after this winter, and in fact, the newsletter that I'm sending out, what people don't know is that the pipeline just about went dry in the Northeast, causing a lot of plants that were able to shift back to burning oil. The power plants, and then the oil supplies got disrupted. The heating oil supplies were in such demand that they were shipping it in from Europe, but that got disrupted by the weather, and some of these plants were burning crude oil. They had no choice because the refineries couldn't pump out the number 2 heating oil and the diesel fast enough for the electric plants. So they had to heat up the crude and burn the crude direct, which is like the worst thing for air pollution, all because they can't frack natural gas in New York State because New York's governor won't allow it. So we have a major disaster in the making because there's not enough pipeline capacity and they don't have enough underground storage capacity in the Northeast to build inventories. So they're just whatever the pipeline ships, that's all we have in the Northeast to heat the place. And there's not enough pipeline capacity. So what you're talking about with the inventories, they haven't built those, they haven't added to the huge underground storage capacity. So what happened is you've got tens of thousands of shut-in wells across the country, because when natural gas went down to $1.80 per million BTUs, it wasn't profitable to pump it any longer, and they shut them down. Then the price went back up. Now it's at $5.70. It went down from $6.50, and all those wells got opened up. But how much can a pipeline really carry?
Well, all I could say is this: after all the years in the energy business, and if you go back to when I started it in 1995, we're almost to 2 decades, and the entire time I was there, and to this day, it's always about the next great thing that's going to ramp up supply and make us energy independent and bring prices down. It never happens. It was oil sands tar sands for a while until they realized that they're very high cost. And there was the ethanol ridiculousness. And, now it's the shale, which from reading, Steve St. Angelo, among others, it's quite apparent that it has a lot of the characteristics of incredibly rapid depletion, which make it peak very quickly. And I don't know if that's going to actually happen, but I sense it will. And then, of course, there's the not in my backyard, as you're talking about. No one wants to build refineries and stuff like that. And there was the what do you call it? The Cushing. There was the supply log jams last year. So it doesn't take much for the whole supply magic game to collapse. And right now it's looking pretty ugly.
Yeah, it's looking real ugly. The only thing that saved the Northeast from a major blackout, brownout, is it got warm. Funny, there's nothing we could do about it. We're still dependent upon the weather. Hey, but what about the Chinese stock market and the housing market? It really looks like China is unraveling, doesn't it?
What a brilliant segue there. Good topics to get to. Look, anyone who's reading, me at least, or anyone who's paying attention to Zero Hedge and the alternative media realizes that, China's government may only have a 40% debt to GDP, but its corporations and local government have a debt to GDP of close to 150%. I think the only real corporate sector that can even compare to that is the British banking sector, and probably the U.S. banking sector if they would ever put all of their derivatives on their balance sheets. This is a major, what they call shadow banking system, because it's not the government making the loans, it's the banks making loans to each other. And we've seen a bunch of them at the verge of default. In fact, there have been a few defaults. And now this morning, you've seen the first data that clearly shows that this historic, and when I say historic, I mean historic real estate bubble going on in the major cities. The prices are starting to turn down, and the developers are lowering their prices. I don't think that there's any bubble we've seen in our lifetime that compares. And I was just in China, as you know, in August, and I got some firsthand knowledge. First of all, I saw all the building. Like, I can't even put it into words. It's like a new solar system is being built there. Building after building after building. There's no empty space for hundreds of miles. And people have been lining up to buy these things sight unseen, and no one ever lives in them. And now they're turning down. They're more expensive than New York City real estate, and they're turning down. And the funny thing is, with all the PPTs everywhere, like here and in Europe, especially with this, whatever it takes, I'm going to do the OMT if I need to, which they will, by the way. The Chinese market hasn't responded at all. The Chinese stock market is almost down to its 2008 bottom. And I can't think of anything more ominous. I told everybody last week, the data is showing that they are not only not growing 7%, they are definitely in recession. They are definitely contracting right now. And that's why the government, the PBOC, printed 3 times as much money in January as the Bank of Japan and the Fed combined. So wait till you see what the government of China does in the coming months to try to help things out.
And I'm going to make another postulate here.
Yes.
Because look, you know the Chinese and I know them. I hung out in casinos for a number of years, stupidly, I might add. I didn't lose a lot of money, but I lost some money there. The Chinese love to gamble like no other group on the planet. They put the JP Morgan bankers to shame. Now, supposedly, a number of years ago, the Chinese government banned gambling in derivatives, for all Chinese banks. I don't believe that the Chinese banks stopped gambling in derivatives. I think they're more in derivatives than they've ever been before. And when this thing, the derivative bubble, blows up, they will blow up just like the rest of the banks of the world. I don't believe they ever stopped. Somehow they figured out another vehicle to gamble in these derivatives, Andy. I don't believe they stopped.
The thing with Chinese banks is, for the most part, they simply are not public. I mean, a few of them are, but most of them are off the grid. So while they're doing these things, it's just simply not public information what they're doing. But the fact is, it's pretty well known. This shadow banking thing is pretty well defined. That cumulatively, how much excess has been created there, and whether they're derivatives or just straight loans or whatever. Yes, the Chinese have taken an enormous amount of risk. That's not the government doing it. This is the as you say, this is the people and the corporations that have done it. And either the government lets them go, and you have a massive crash in China, which will be beyond epic. I mean, it'll make our internet bubble look like nothing. Or you just keep printing more and more money. And as I said, they printed 3 times as much money as the Bank of Japan and the Fed in January alone. So they'll keep doing that. And remember, they're also pegged, the yuan is pegged to the dollar. So if the Fed increases their QE more, which they're going to at some point, they're gonna have to print even more just to keep up with that peg. So it's very scary for those that think that China is in control and doing well. Yes, they have a lot of gold, that's for sure. They're going to be the end game winners. But believe me, when you have a 1.5 billion people to feed, and business is getting bad, and the foreign business is getting bad, there's no way of covering that up. And the fact that the government has fostered, because let's face it, there are a bunch of communists, a handful of them that are running things, and they let all this happen underneath them. There's no way to fix it except to just print money and bail them all out. Sound familiar?
Yeah, but I'm telling you, this derivative thing, I remember they ordered their banks out of it, like, I think in 2009, and, somehow it just didn't work out the way they said. So it's going to really be interesting to see how this thing shakes out, and to see how they're not exempt from it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just know, and,
nothing's exempt.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yep. Nothing is exempt. That's
Gold is
really
exempt. Silver is exempt.
That's really what it comes down to. And that's really, if you had to take one message out of the conference, that's really it. You know?
There's your title.
Yeah.
Only gold and silver are exempt.
Yep. Only gold and silver are exempt from what's going to happen here. And, we're just getting closer and closer to it. And those bankers, they just found another guy who died in Texas, a J.P. Morgan, rocket scientist. And he evidently had a myocardial infarction at 32 years old, which is like less than 0.5% chance of occurring. So,
It's like Goodfellas. I have no opinions because I don't know anything else other than that. It looks a lot like Goodfellas to me.
Yeah, clear the decks, cover up the loose ends. You just never know. And that's unfortunate. And, it's a high-stress job, and, the stress can just get to you.
Well, people will die. I mean, it's nice to see some bankers die, to be honest with you. I can't say I have any sympathy, but I'd rather it was their bosses.
Yeah, I don't want to see anyone meet an early end. And
I do if they've been defrauding me and my family and friends and colleagues. Damn right I do. I have no sympathy.
I'd rather see them see due process like the people in Ukraine.
Sure, due process. Due process. And then they can get rid of.
Due process, like the president of the Ukraine. Did you see his house and the estates there behind those walls? And Putin's got to be thinking very hard about how the people of Russia are feeling these days.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't doubt it. I don't know much about the Ukraine. The whole Soviet bloc is, not a good place to be a citizen. But, this is a particularly scary place because there's a lot of political influence involved. And the Russian ruble is now at an all-time low. I mean, all-time low. And it's no doubt part of it. And if you remember, the whole Putin and Obama thing over Syria, well, this could rapidly devolve into something like that here. And this is a far bigger, more important issue to Russia than Syria is.
Yeah, big, and he had to kind of recognize it at this point, because basically the guy who was running the Ukraine, this guy came in and threw that guy in jail. They're trying to make Ukraine autocratic, authoritarian. People rose up and tossed this guy. He fled the country, and now Putin is not real happy with the change of leadership. He's going to do everything he can to undermine this new government. It looks like the U.S. and Europe are just going to send this guy a boatload of money. And, I think there's the gas pipeline goes through the Ukraine as well, right? That sends gas to all of Europe. It's just got a lot of ramifications.
It's a very strategic place. But I'll just, in my part on this, my only comment is it's no surprise that all the money printing in the West is translating to all of these, currency collapses, Ukrainian hryvnia, all-time low, and social unrest around the world. And the money printing will increase dramatically per what we're talking about. And therefore, all of these things will increase dramatically.
Yeah, and you know what? If there's anything that symbolizes the control of government over its people, it is the currency unit. And when the currency unit collapses, the control of the government over you kind of goes with it, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you have to look forward to when the ultimate collapse occurs. Mm-hmm. I think we'll end it on that, Andy, and we'll talk to you next week.
Look forward to it.
Take care.
You too.
Our friend Tom Dyson at the Palm Beach Letter is giving away free copies of a really cool report he put together called How to Protect Yourself from America's New Secret Police. Inside, you'll learn all sorts of simple everyday tricks you can use to make yourself a little less visible and vulnerable to scammers, hackers, and even the federal government. For instance, inside Tom's report, you'll learn which free internet email service never to use. This company doesn't care if your account gets hacked or not, or things the government must tell you if they request your social security number, and how to spot skimmers lying in wait on ATMs and gas pumps, and much, much more. These tricks and secrets are low-hanging fruit ideas. You don't have to invest time or much money into them. Most are free. But by taking some basic measures, you can make your privacy much harder to invade than your neighbors. Tom's report is available for a limited time to listeners who take a trial subscription to his newsletter. Just visit the Financial Survival Network homepage for more information, or go to www.palmbeachletter2.com. That's www.palmbeachletter2.com.
The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.